We're going to call the meeting back to order. Okay, let's call the meeting back to order. We're going to move on to agenda item 7, Wildlife Management Damage Committee. Commissioner Macbeth and Pete Bradley. We've had open meeting law complaints with the committee. We had some questions asked during the committee meeting between noon and 1 today about the legality of us going forward with this and how it was agendized today. And before we spend a couple hours going the wrong direction to understand we can't go that direction again today, I want to ask Mr. Newton to help us through the process and explain to us where we are on the open meeting law violations, if we've covered any potential open meeting law violation going forward, to make sure that we can legally move forward on agenda item number 7A and 7B. So, Mr. Newton, can you help us out? And maybe Commissioner Macbeth could, since he was the committee chair and he heard the question probably more clearly than I did in the whole discussion, maybe he can help me out with part of the questions that we're going to ask you, Mr. Newton.
Okay, Dr. Lent raised an issue with regard to a recent amendment to the open meeting law that indicated that we had to have gotten an attorney general opinion and some other things with regard to the violation and put it on our agenda. And I don't know, maybe we can have Dr. Lynn come up and set forth what he stated. I wasn't familiar with this new change in the open meeting law, but I understand that you've looked at it, and so can you address those concerns?
Yes. As far as I understand, the question was whether or not the agenda for today's Wildlife Damage Committee meeting had to state specifically that the agenda item in question was corrective in nature of a previous violation. I've looked at AB 65 both as it was proposed and as it was enrolled. When AB 65 was originally proposed, in section, let me make sure I get the numbers right, section 4, subsection 2, it did have a requirement that if you were trying to take corrective action of an alleged open meeting law violation, that the agendized item had to state that you were taking corrective action and also had to include a brief description of the alleged violation. During the process of that bill working its way through the legislature, that language was deleted that required that descriptive information to be on the agenda. What was left in its stead is simply a requirement that the corrective item be included on a future agenda in conformity with the open meeting law, which I believe you have done. So I don't believe there's an issue regarding taking corrective action. All of that is required to be done within 30 days of the alleged violation, which I believe today is the 30th day. So I believe we're okay on that front as well. So as far as conforming with the new changes to the open meeting law, I believe you're in good shape on that front. I'm not, sorry, you also mentioned something about a letter. I'm not aware of anything that requires any permissive act on behalf of the Attorney General's office for a public body to attempt to take this corrective action. It's simply that if you do so within 30 days, the Attorney General's office now has the option of not pursuing the alleged open meeting law violation. It is also clear in the statute that by taking the corrective action, you are not admitting that there was a violation. You're simply trying to fix the problem before it becomes a problem, before there's actually a finding that it is a problem. And I believe that's what you've done here today.
And then I would ask Dr. Lent to come up, and does that satisfy your the position that you? I don't think it's right. Can't hear you. Okay. Dr. Lent said that he doesn't think it's right, but that it's okay. That's what he said. So the second second item that came up during our meeting, the reconvened meeting and during the lunch hour, was made by Mr. Carpenter, who indicated that that we needed to, we couldn't go forward with the policy because we've made changes in this meeting, in this most recent committee meeting, and that, and therefore we couldn't do either a first reading or a second reading for this commission meeting, and that, in fact, we have to do serial commission meetings to approve the policy. In other words, we have a first reading on one commission meeting and another reading on a second commission meeting. There is a history for us doing first and second readings at the same commission meeting, maybe on subsequent days of the same commission meeting. That was actually instituted with when Dr. Lent was the chairman of the commission. So I know that Dag Stockton was probably had vetted that, so I feel pretty comfortable we're okay there. But do you see any issue with us going forward today with regard to a first reading of the policy as revised by the committee? And you know, I don't know how much substantive change we've done to the policy, but we have made quite a few changes, a lot of editing changes, and so is there any issue there?
I don't believe so. There would be an issue if it was a regulation that you were working on. That's very clearly delineated under NRS 233B, the process you have to go through in order to amend or adopt a regulation. And one of those processes is that you cannot do both the workshop and the public hearing in the same day. They have to be done on separate days. However, this is not a regulation that you guys are discussing. As far as I understand, it's a policy which has less weight than a regulation and is not subject to those same requirements under NRS 233B. And I'm not familiar with any other section of NRS that places that requirement on a policy of a public body.
Okay, and so maybe in conclusion, then, is the commission ready to go forward with agenda item 7A specifically? Go ahead and do our first reading of the policy.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now we've got through all the legal part of this. Let's move on to agenda item number 7A, first reading of new commission policy entitled number 23, Predation Management, Commissioner Macbeth. And we're not
in public comment yet.
Can I speak?
No,
Nope,
No,
we're
not right
not
now.
public comment yet.
Okay.
We're gonna do the reading. We're gonna go to commission questions on the reading, and then we will take it out to public comment before we bring it back to the commission. That's the process we've conducted commission meetings with the whole time, so.
We're trying to get the policy up on the screen so everybody can see it. I guess my first question to the chairman is, how do you want to do this? Do you want me to read it into the record, or do we want everybody to read it on the screen and ask, and deal with any questions? What's the procedure that you'd like to see?
How many pages is this? I'm looking here.
Or do you want me to just go over the changes that the committee?
Let's go over some of the changes, and then if, I think everybody's seen where we were before, and if we can go over some of the changes and just hit the highlights of the changes, and then any other committee members that want to chime in, Commissioner Bliss or Commissioner Lane at that point, if you have anything additional to add to what Commissioner.
The only thing I'm
Macbeth-
concerned about is that this is the first time that the policy has been before the commission. The policy has been vetted extensively in committee meetings, numerous, I think we're now at number 3.
Yes.
And have spent close to, 14 some hours on this policy, and so actually even more now, so 17 hours on the policy. The committee has, but I don't believe the commission has actually seen any of it yet, so that's why I'm wondering if we ought to
I
read it.
believe the commission has seen it through
Support materials,
The
for
support
sure.
materials, so the commission is familiar with it. Commissioner Drew had something to add
I
before
guess
you.
my recommendation would be, since we have what you started with this morning on paper in front of us, I don't think we need to read everything, but I would like to see
The change.
all the changes that you made so that everyone's clear on exactly how it reads on this first reading.
Okay. So with that, then we had no changes. The policy overall has different sections. We have a purpose section, we have a definition of predation management section, we have a section for authority of predation management, then we have a section that basically sets forth the predation management policies, and then we have a section that actually sets forth the procedure for the predation management plan. And so the first section that we did an amendment to was the section that deals with authority for predation management. And basically, what we did there was to lay out all of the sections of NRS that gave the commission the authority to basically put forth the policy. However, in that process, we left out a reference to one section of NRS 502.253, and that is subsection 2. And so we've added that section in, and so that basically reads, pursuant to NRS 502.253, subparagraph 2, the Department of Wildlife is hereby authorized to expend a portion of the money collected pursuant to subsection 1 of NRS 502.253 to enable the State Department of Agriculture to develop and carry out the programs described in subsection 1 of NRS 502.253 A through D above. So that just recognizes that the department has the authority to send some of the money over to Department of Ag and, eventually to Wildlife Services. So did you want to you want to wait and do public comment at the end then, and we'll just
Yes.
go
Go
through
through the
everything?
whole thing,
Do you
then
want to
we'll do
have
public
any
comment.
commission questions on each item, or,
If the commissioners have questions
Questions,
on
they
each
just
item,
raise-
let's get it done while we're going through it.
okay.
If the
So
public has any questions.
I'll go ahead and ask then if there's any questions of the commission with regard to the change, the addition of that additional provision of NRS to the authority section of the policy. I don't see any, so I'll move forward. So moving on to predation management policies in policy A. The first thing that we did, there was some leftover verbiage that actually came out of AB 345 that was in the title, and so we struck that. So we struck for the benefit of other species of wildlife. It was clarifying language only, so it really didn't have much purpose other than just clarification in any event. So we just went ahead and struck that to keep that consistent with what we had done in the body. We had also previously stricken any references to AB 345 out of the legal section, so that's all we were doing here. In subparagraph 2, we added at the very end to provide the best data possible. That was a kind of a conforming amendment. We had a similar phrase in another section, and so we've pretty much added that to any place where we have this similar section throughout the policy section, so we've added that just to be consistent. In subsection 4, we made it clear that with regard to estimates of populations or densities of wildlife, that we've added the language, if needed to assess project viability, statewide and project area estimates of carnivore and corvid populations or densities will be based on an objective analysis. Commissioner Bliss actually brought in some very good language changes that created a lot more flexibility for the department and everybody involved. And so rather than have rigid statements, we injected a little bit of flexibility in here. And so anyway, I think that those were all good changes. Number 5, and throughout the document, what we do is we have some of these long titles of various entities, including the Commission and Wildlife Services, and so we put the formal name we put the formal name in, and then we put in quotes, commission. So the very first change there in subsection 5 was to add the Nevada, it should be board, B-O-A-R-D. You got one A in there too much. And so from there on, we use the word commission. Same thing, we indicate U.S. Department of Agriculture, Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, Wildlife Services, and we had previously had that as USDA, APHIS, WS, and we just changed that to Wildlife Services. That's what we normally call them, and so we just changed that to kind of get common usage of their term. Now, right after that, the committee, we wrestled. We spent a lot of time trying to determine whether we were going to allow private contractors to be able to do damage control projects, in other words, actual lethal control projects. And so we, I don't know if we could come to an agreement, and so we've got some options here as to what to do, and so we're really asking the commission what, for some guidance as to where we want to be on this. And so the options are, do we want to state that Wildlife Services is the primary but not exclusive contractor in lethal predatory wildlife control, or do we just want to indicate that they're a contractor in lethal predatory wildlife control, to basically indicate that that they may not be the primary, and then we that it's at the discretion of the department to use other lethal predator control contractors. So I guess, how do you want to handle that? We've got a couple of these where we're asking the commission to kind of weigh in, because the committee was kind of in the middle, and rather than make a decision, we just thought we'd bring it to the commission.
Commissioner Drew?
Without having heard any public comment on it, I guess my initial reaction is that the way it's worded now seems to make sense, at least in my opinion.
Okay, and is that primary, not exclusive? Keeping that language in?
And then I had a question further up whenever you're ready for it.
Okay. Any further comments on that? Commissioner Bliss?
I'm wondering about striking the word primary, just as a contractor, because, I know there may be down in the future something, a project that maybe they won't be able to do, or whatever. I don't know why if we're going to open it up to contractors, I don't believe we need to have the word primary in there.
So I was okay with leaving primary not with the qualification that it be not exclusive, because in my opinion, I don't know how prevalent the use of private contractors is going to be. I guess we have to make a call now to avoid maybe having to amend this policy in the future. But the question is are we comfortable with the fact that Wildlife Services will be the primary, contractor, but that we leave open the possibility that we are going to have a private contractor, and therefore it's not exclusive, and that's what the language states. Commissioner Bliss is saying, let's just do away with primary, not exclusive, and just say a contractor. And so, any other comments or ideas on that? Go ahead, Commissioner McNinch.
All right. My tendency is to, I feel more comfortable with it being a primary for sure. Again, I'm interested in what the public has to say, but when we start getting into the lethal removal of predatory wildlife, my tendency is to want to be I don't want that spread out a whole bunch, and I can't really put a finger on why. It's just a gut feeling, just telling me it's the best way to go. So I'm interested. Might have some differences of opinion on how things have been done, or where we're at with some of the relationship with Wildlife Services, but I do tend to trust them when it comes to this type of stuff, and I believe that they've handled themselves over the years with I'm comfortable with where, I feel comfortable enough with them that there's a foundation to work with for sure. So.
Okay, Commissioner Wallace?
I can go either way on this, but I tend to agree with Commissioner Bliss about the primary part. I mean, that kind of almost goes without saying, I would say. That's how we've done it in the past, and it's kind of how we tend to do it. But, when you put as primary, not exclusive, you're pretty much negating the primary part anyway. So, just as a wording perspective, I don't I don't see the necessity of primary.
Commissioner Lane?
We had considerable discussion about this, and there were a number of people who wanted to have us open this up. And I did ask I asked questions of Wildlife Services, because I think that Wildlife Services operates under their own rules. They don't have to adhere to any of the rules that we have in terms of trapping or the kinds of traps that they use or visitation, and I think we all need to understand that. And that's what gives me pause. But by the same token, I know we've had issues in the past under other commissions where we've had contractors that were not quote-unquote qualified, and that's why we did that. And we've had issues with that. So I'm kind of leaning to just saying a contractor to try to deal with that. I'm not to having other people, as long as they're qualified. I guess that's my concern.
Okay, Commissioner McNinch again.
I guess that kind of brings a question in my mind then. I know that there is a memorandum of understanding, and what's outlined in that? Maybe we need to have a better understanding of what that memorandum between the Department of Wildlife and Wildlife Services is. Does it say that things will be conducted in conjunction with the rules that NDOW operates under? What does that memorandum state specifically?
Somebody from the department want to?
It's a fairly long document, and it includes those items that it follows in order of their responsibilities and our responsibilities, and without having it in hand, I can't, I can go look it up in the computer and maybe bring it up on the screen, but I'm unable to come up with a lot of specifics.
I can tell you, it's been probably a month since I've read it. But I think it does recognize the department as that with respect to wildlife and making the decision whether there's going to be a predation management, program, that it's the department that is really primarily responsible for that decision. And then Wildlife Services does have to follow certain requirements, is my recollection, under state law. Maybe not all of them, but a good number of them. And I think it really does establish that the Department of Wildlife is really, for lack of a better word, driving the bus But that, when it does come to, you know, the predation management part, you know, and doing a program, then of course, you know, Wildlife Services. And so maybe, I don't know if Mr. Jensen might be able to come up and give some further elaboration of the MOU. He's probably the person that understands it the most. Director Walsley, do you have anything to add?
No, I would just concur with you. I think the genesis of the document was to establish a clear understanding with respect to the state's roles and Wildlife Services roles. I think that there was some disagreement as far as which state laws Wildlife Services should be subject to, maybe not legally, but I think it was exactly as the title suggests, a memorandum of understanding, and it was reaching consensus on which state laws should be adhered to. I don't know that it has a clear relationship to the idea of whether Wildlife Services would act as the primary contractor, and I don't know if that's Commissioner McNitch's question or concern, but I would be interested in Mr. Jensen's perspective as well.
And, and I do want to read, I do distinctly remember this section, and I'll read it to you. It's right at the end of the document. I believe it's, no, actually, it's, on page 3 of 7, it says, "This instrument does not restrict the parties from participating in similar activities with other public or private agencies, organizations, and individuals." I think I read that language to mean that, that the department can contract with private contractors. Mr. Jensen.
For the record, I'm Mark Jensen, State Director, Wildlife Services. Again, Mr. Wasley's correct. It's just the MOU is to establish both the authorities of NDOW, the authorities of Wildlife Services, and then our relationship, because again, we are a little bit more than just a contractor. We are a cooperating agency. So there's a lot of different things that are agreed upon. Again, we have a job to do as well, but again, we are a partner here, and we want to be a good neighbor. So there are things that we have agreed with the state that we'll do things a certain way as a partner, as a good neighbor. So that's what the MOU does, is to establish our relationship, our working relationship with the Department of Wildlife.
And just to round out this discussion on private contractors, so you are in agreement that the department can contract with a private contractor. I think that's a whole separate set of rules. First of all, there's certain things they absolutely cannot do. If they're going to use poison bait eggs, you know, to get ravens, that's only within your purview. And so pretty much the department has only one source to contract with that kind of work. But I do believe that private contractors definitely have to comply with all state laws. They aren't allowed to use any of the, you know, maybe some of the methods that Wildlife Services would be allowed to use. So they are required to comply with all state laws, I think is what we were advised.
Again, Mark Jensen for the record. Again, you're correct as far as the eggs go. DRC 1339 has a pesticide label, and that label says that it can only be used by our employees. As far as a private contractor, of course, the department, the state can do whatever they want. And I've said before that the activities and the projects that we have done in the past for the department and for the state have been covered under our NEPA analysis. So the work that we've done has been analyzed and it's covered under our NEPA. If the state chooses to go do whatever they want to do with a private contractor, that's up to the state, but it wouldn't be covered under our NEPA analysis. Also with the private contractors, it's my understanding that the department could give them authority to use other methods that wouldn't necessarily be covered under the sporting regulations, whether that be some kind of a depredation permit or whatever. But again, that would be up to the department.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner McNinch, does that give you some additional background and help you, or are you more confused than ever?
Not so much confused more than ever, probably didn't necessarily take me off of my question. I think I need a little better understanding of it ultimately, but I think the point is, and I won't put Mark on the spot, but, I think if I'm reading Commissioner Lane, if we have changes in our trapping visitation, or if we have things that are outlined in NAC, if we have a 96-hour trap visitation law, are they going to, abide by it as closely as possible? Or are we going to see 200-hour trap visitation, or how does it all work? And I've never known of a specific instance where that's been a problem, but, considering the environment that we're working in, I think it's got to be part of the discussion to some extent. And, if a private contractor is subject to these laws, poison eggs aside and things like that aside, why wouldn't Wildlife Services be subject to it? I guess that's kind of the question that I still have that needs to be answered a little bit. Because they're in essence a contractor.
Well, actually, and I'm not, maybe our DAG and Mark Jensen can speak to this, but when you have a federal statute that gives, in this case, Wildlife Services their authority to do things, then that authority basically, trumps the state laws. And so, kind of reading between the tea leaves here, I think what Wildlife Services is saying is that, look, we have our own federal charge under federal statute of what we can do and what we can't do. And we recognize the state has their laws. And irrespective of the laws, we've entered into an agreement as to how we're going to operate, irrespective of those, So I really do think that Wildlife Services can use the methods that are sanctioned under their federal statute, but they may have, as a matter of their relationship with the state, agreed to abide by state law where they might otherwise not be required.
Yeah, and I understand the argument, but I guess I would take that one step further. And there's no hidden agenda here on my part. I have a level of comfort because I don't think that I guess I struggle philosophically a little bit with the concept of commercializing the lethal removal for predator management. Okay, I'm just on the fence right there. I'm not sure where I sit on it exactly, but Wildlife Services has a charge, okay, under their federal cover. Some of that does not include what we're asking them to do. They can't just come out and do those things without us asking them to. So that takes them out of one purview and puts them in another, in my mind. I don't know legally where it fits in. Now, does that mean that they can't use the eggs or the resources that are available to them? No, it doesn't mean that at all. I'm just saying that the things that we would be asking Wildlife Services to do specific to our needs aren't necessarily things that they would come in and do as part of their existing charge. That's just where I'm at.
Mr. Jensen.
Again, for the record, Mark Jensen, State Director. Again, as far as any of these projects go, if the department and the commission was to write a project and say specifically, we want the equipment checked at this interval, then we would try to do that. I would tell you how much it's going to cost, but as far as these projects to protect wildlife, if the project is written in a certain way that you describe exactly how you want equipment checked, then we would help you with that as best we could. It's going to be way more expensive, but we would try to help you with that. Now, on the other end of it, as far as my job to protect agriculture, now that's a little bit different because I do have the federal authority, the federal direction from Congress to do this work. And I have an obligation to follow what the Department of Agriculture says. And I have guidelines, I have a policy manual about this thick that says how we're going to conduct ourselves. And that's what we do as far as protecting agriculture. This, if you want to write a project that says something different, again, as a partner, we'll try to help you with it.
And Mark, and I think we're on the same page. I agree. I see that distinction, and I don't want my comments to be taken as a challenge to your authorities under your other. I just see that once we contract with you, it changes the game in some respect, somewhere along the way. Yeah.
Okay. And, sure, go ahead.
Okay, the question I had is in the same section under sub 3 where it says control activities will be conducted where viability of game populations are at risk of being negatively affected by predation. Maybe someone could tell me what the thought is in using the term viability there, because when I hear viability, I'm thinking unless the population is headed towards extinction, we're not going to do a project. And I hope I'm wrong in that interpretation, but I was just curious.
Yeah, I don't know if we spent much time on that word. The idea is that, are they under carrying capacity is probably the best way,
Yeah, and I guess my thought would be, being disproportionately affected by predation or something like that, but I think viability may in the long term give us some unintended consequences in that context.
Okay, and what paragraph is that in? Oh, yeah,
In sub
3?
3. So my thought would be more along the lines of control activities will be conducted where game and sensitive wildlife species, which is an NRS, are at risk of being disproportionately affected by predation, just so it's a little bit more broad in what we can do.
Okay,
And in the event that we have something like the sage grouse that may come off the game species list and end up as a sensitive species, I
Okay.
think we need some flexibility
so
there.
that's a separate question than
Right.
the question down below. Okay,
Unless the department has a different read on viability in this context.
yeah, now that I think about it, I'm thinking I'm agreeing with you. I want to get with the rest of the committee members. What do you think? If the proposed language sound good? You want to go ahead and read that again to Joanne, you're doing the minutes now, so Pete's, he's our administrative person.
Yeah, maybe what I'll do is I'll read it again, but then I'll write it up for Pete and bring it over to him. And when we get to the very end, I can put it in the form of a motion. But
Okay,
what I had in mind was control activities will be conducted where game and sensitive wildlife species are at risk of being disproportionately affected by predation.
how's that look? Yeah, you've already. You took out your affected. Okay, so go ahead. Pete, did you have a question? Okay. So where are we on our primarily not exclusive versus a contractor on the 5?
I guess I would answer that by saying, I mean, at this point, this is a kind of a broad policy to help guide us going forward. And I think some of the questions that got brought up in the discussion will be more hashed out as we develop the projects going forward in future year management plans. So in my mind, I don't think there's a wrong answer. I think I'm comfortable with either one.
Okay, any other comments from the commissioners or commissioner committee members?
Commissioner McBeth, and I'm the one that brought it up, but if it's listed as as a contractor in lethal predatory. I mean, that's sufficient for me to move forward, and I think the discussion is important, and we're having that, and that's you know, it helps clarify the, you know, what is meant by it anyway, and ultimately, I think it'll work out.
Okay. So let's strike primary, not exclusive, take the brackets off of A. Okay. And then 6 just has again, striking USDA APHIS Wildlife Services and substituting wildlife, and then adding the word "the" at the end. So I guess I'll ask does anybody have any further questions on policy A? Okay, seeing none, I'll go ahead and move forward to B. Again, in subsection 2 of similar provision, we just add the language to provide the best data possible. And then in 3, we just changed some wordage there, struck conduct projects and added the term wildlife management activities will be conducted. I think that was just an incomplete sentence, and we needed to get some vowels in there. 4, this was, again, this is similar to the one above. If needed to assess project viability, statewide project area estimates of carnivore and corvid populations or densities will be based on objective analysis. And then today, somebody pointed out that we were eluding instead of, we should be eluding instead of eluding. So we have that change in 5. And then we added, Commissioner Bliss, this was yours, right? Yes, so we added number 6 today to require habitat projects may be considered after all necessary state and federal project clearances have been completed and documentation has been provided to the committee commission prior to the February meeting of the committee commission. That recognized, we had to actually had this happen in this predation management plan this year. So we had a proposed project on public land, and as it turned out, the project clearances from the NEPA clearances weren't going to come in during this fiscal year, and therefore the money wasn't going to get spent. So we basically didn't approve that project and moved the money to other projects. And so rather than be put in that position, we're basically now recommending that that all the project clearances, NEPA or whatever else it is, be done up front. Okay, so any questions, comments on policy B for management activities? C, policy for conducting research for managing and controlling predatory wildlife. We struck in the title there, we struck a lot of language that's actually down further in the text, and so we just cleaned that up. And then moving down, again, number 4, if needed to assess project viability, statewide and project area estimates of carnivore and corvid populations or densities will be based on objective analysis. So that's pretty much in all 3 of the A, B, and C provisions. Again, just trying to get that cleared up. Okay, so any commission questions on policy C for research programs? Okay, moving on. Policy D, programs for education of the public concerning management and control of predatory wildlife. We made no changes to that one. So we're now through, we basically put together policy statements with respect to the 4 areas of 502.253, A, B, C, and D, tracking the NRS provision, and then indicating what the policy desires of the commission are. So now we're moving to the predation management plan, and so from here on out, it's basically a procedure. The policy sets forth the procedure to come up with the predation management plan. I'll tell you right now that the this policy on putting together the predation management plan is circular in that it requires, a lot of these projects are ongoing. There is probably going to be the exception rather than the rule that there'll be just a one-year project. Whether it be a control program or research or even management activities, they are more than likely going to be more than 1 year. And so there are reporting requirements at the end of the policy that are necessary to be considered in formulating and approving new projects. And so you'll see, we're going to go through the whole process, but it's, one of the things we're going to be dealing with is that when we get this policy in place, we're going to have to start somewhere in the middle and in our assessment of projects. So starting off, the first thing we did is we changed the word cooperation to coordination was maybe just, we just wanted to make sure that we were all sitting at the table, as Commissioner Bliss indicated, to put together the plan. And we had wanted to, there's many of us that think that the name Wildlife Damage Management Committee doesn't necessarily reflect exactly what we're doing. But as of right now, that is the name of the committee. And so we struck all references to Predation Management Committee. It's not on the agenda today, and so what we decided is that we change that. Now, I see that we have Predation Management Committee in parentheses, but I understand that you went through and changed all of those to Wildlife Damage Management Committee. So I think you need to just strike the parenthetical. Everything in parentheses and quotes there, just strike it completely. And then we, down quite a few lines, we've added and/or, managing and/or controlling predatory wildlife, and then we we defined our fiscal year. We use the term fiscal year throughout the document, so from here on out, we're just going to call it fiscal year, but our fiscal year is July 1 through June 30th. And then we had a lot of conforming amendments. We just defined in the section above control programs, management activities, research programs, and education programs, and we actually gave them those terms. And so throughout the document, you're going to see where we clean things up to use those exact terms to indicate one of the four policies that we're implementing here. And in the end of that one paragraph, we added wildlife management science. I wanted to clarify that that it was management of wildlife, science-related management of wildlife. Okay, so getting into the predation management plan, each fiscal year, the department is going to prepare a draft predation management plan, and so we had some language to kind of, a lot of this is, again, is just cleaning up the terms that we're using. And so we're going to, throughout this document, refer to control programs, management activities, research programs, and education programs. And they all reflect back up to one of the four. And we're going to collectively call all of those projects. And so what we're doing here in this paragraph is just cleaning that all up, and we have some wordsmithing going on here as well. On two, This is the first place, in the document, we made, in this section 2 of the predation management plan, we indicated that the plan is going to be made available to all stakeholders. And so after this, Commissioner Lane latched onto the word stakeholders, and so we, rather than making reference to all of the parties that are involved, from wildlife services to county advisory boards to conservation organizations and the general public, we pretty much just make reference to stakeholders as being, all of the above. And again, a lot of I just noticed that we're misspelling boards again. County advisory boards, B-A-R-D. There you go. And we just called it the draft plan, so you see that we do that consistently. And again, a lot of these are, again, duplicative. Any place now that you see Predation Management Committee, we've changed it to Wildlife Damage Management Committee to reflect the actual name of the committee. One of the things that we did is, again, to provide flexibility, we changed the word shall to may on making a voting to recommend to the department a ranking of all the projects. 4, we're now preparing the department's going to prepare the final draft plan. Just cleaning up the definitions there. And this is where we first strike all the references to county advisory boards, citizen organizations, and members of the public, and just call them stakeholders. So you can see there's a lot of editing going on here. Any questions from the commission on any of this so far?
Yeah, Commissioner Macbeth, I guess my question on number 4, on the final plan, it says the commission shall make its final recommendations. So the way this policy reads now, the only authorization this commission has is recommendation in nature, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the department has to adhere to that. I don't think that would necessarily be a problem, but in my opinion, I think the commission should adopt or approve the final plan. I don't think it should be recommendations at that point.
Well, I'm glad that you bring that up. That was actually and to be quite honest, it is the reason that we have drafted this policy in this way actually goes to the issue that of what did the legislature do in the original legislation. And the legislation reads that the department is to get guidance from the commission. And so that's a relatively vague term, and so I asked actually Dag Newton to look into that, and so he got me a copy of the legislative history, and so we both went through it, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, and he could certainly straighten me out, but he basically determined that the commission does not approve the plan. But it's also not such that the department just does whatever it wants. And I believe that the term that you used is that the department has to work in coordination with the commission to come up with the plan. And so take it from there and tell me if I got it right.
No, you're doing well so far. That's exactly what I said.
Okay.
At one point in the legislative history, the language gave more power to the commission. And as they worked through the various drafts, that got watered down, or it got rebalanced into the language that you see now in that statute. And there was a lot of discussion in the various committee meetings regarding that the two entities need to work cooperatively together, and that's what they were attempting to do. That's why they took out the commission approval and put it into the language that it is now, was to make sure that the parties both had to work cooperatively.
Right, and I understand that perfectly, and I guess the conversation that I had with LCB during the session was very similar to that. Although the only caveat they added to the end is under your authority to set broad policy, you could make a policy that says the commission will ultimately approve, if not the plan, then at least the projects. So I don't know if that necessarily makes sense or not, but I think it's something that we should lay to rest one way or the other as we're putting this policy together. So essentially, they said exactly what you said, and then they said, but in the context that you guys can set broad policy to direct the department, you could choose to set a policy that says you have power to approve.
You could, but there's a axiom when you're construing statutes that the specific controls the general. So you have a specific statute that says guidance. To try to use a general statute to override that language would be building on a poor foundation, in my view. The specific statute always trumps the general statute. And with that specific statute dealing with this specifically and with the language that it is, I believe, well, I'll stop there. I respectfully, in this instance, would disagree with LCB.
And I can tell you that in my practice of tax law, that it is exactly the same. That if there is a general statute, like in this case, the commission's power to set broad policies versus a specific statute that says the commission shall give guidance, then the specific statute would override the general statute. The legislature is specifically spoken to this particular and removed it from the general and basically put in a particular provision. And so I would say that if we have a policy that indicates that the commission approves this plan, we will be on shaky ground. This is just a policy in any event, but I just think that it would be contrary to that statute and just contrary to law. So this was a major issue for us. We were literally walking down the razor blade, so to speak, trying to just, inject enough guidance into the process so the department understands what the commission wants, yet leaving the ultimate decision to approve the plan with the department. And in some of the earlier drafts of the policy that I drafted, I had actually gone, I pushed the envelope as far as I could, and the department dialed it back. And I understood it, and you didn't get me any complaints, but I wanted to know where the line was, and so by doing it that way, I found out where the line was. And so I know it doesn't require approval of the commission, but when you read this whole policy, if you can go away thinking that all of the stakeholders don't have input, and if you think, and I also feel that from a political standpoint, for the department to not listen to the commission as part of this process is probably going to be someplace they're not going to be comfortable in going. I think that's what I think the politics of it and the way this is written is such that I think we truly are working together to get there, and that I think as Chief Gilbertson, who's not here, has said, we don't have a sword to fall on, and we do want to work with the commission on this, and so I think I'm okay with it, and I think we really need to have it this way to basically be in compliance with NRS.
And having not been privy to those previous conversations, I'm completely comfortable with the explanation, so.
Okay.
And this exact conversation dates back to the past director and a couple dags ago. I mean, I was having this same exact conversation with New Win, and we've had New, and we've changed dags a couple times. This conversation has been an ongoing conversation. Where I'm at on it is guidance means guidance, and that's where I've been the whole time. That means we have some type of guidance. We
input.
might not have the final say, but we do have some authority of guidance. And my assertion the whole time is if the department goes at them on their own, they've taken away a big shield that they have to help protect them through the public process that the commission involves. So I think as long as, you know, the commission is going to change, directors can change, things are changes. But this is going to work for right now. I'm not saying it's going to go, as everything we do, we have to look at where we're at right now, try to get it to the future. But, you know, personnel changes, commissions change. It might not work in the future depending on circumstances, and we've seen that in the past also.
Okay, any other commission comment? I'll move forward then. I'd finished 4, right? Okay, so moving on to number 5. Okay, so just, again, just cleaning up some of the language, but this is where this is where the department's going to come forward with the final predation management plan. 6, again, cleaning up the reference to the committee. And we've used the term projects to cover all, you know, control projects, management activities, research programs, and education programs, so we're making that consistency change. 8. Okay, now section 8, this is the reporting section. So we have now approved the plan for the fiscal year going forward. But at the same time, we've had a fiscal year just completed. So projects from the prior fiscal year are now in this section of the policy being evaluated. And so the contractor is required to come forth with a report. And just the changes here, we're just, all of this is just kind of editing changes consistent with everything we've done before. I do want to say, though, that we, again, changed the word shall to may, and eliminated the without limitation. You know, I've already seen comments that we've already gotten into the weeds too deep on a policy anyway, but anyway, what we're doing here is consistent with some of the recommendations by Commissioner Bliss, is making it more flexible. Because we struck the language in subsection A2 with regard to the MOU and wildlife, between NDOW and Wildlife Services, because we recognize that we might have lethal removal efforts by other entities. And so we inserted the word required. Instead of as required by the MOU, we just said required removal, quarterly removal reports. And so our anticipation is that obviously if the control program is with, if the lethal control program is with Wildlife Services, then they will follow the MOU. And if the control program is with a private contractor, they'll follow the terms of the contract or the permit or whatever is involved in that private contractor. And so, but the intent is, regardless of whether it's Wildlife Services or a private contractor, is that there be quarterly removal reports. Again, editing changes, but another one of the changes to give us a little bit more flexibility is we eliminated the including but not limited to and indicated may include. So the report may include estimated, we added estimated, that's another one of Commissioner Bliss's changes, recommended changes, estimated predator and prey population, estimated prey and population and demographic indices in the treatment and other areas. and also look at any other data sets pertinent to the analysis and interpretation of the program. You know, we got into some really deep discussions, and we got educated on a lot of things, and, you know, and in fact, to the point where Mark Jensen from Wildlife Services indicated that there's a literature that identifies 18 variables that impact predation management projects. And so, anyway, what we're trying to do here is you know, hopefully the department and the contractor are going to be working together to identify as many of the variables as possible. But in the end, it's going to be very interesting to see where we end up on a lot of this, because with 18 variables, you can see where it's going to be interesting to see, you know, if we're going to either, you know, if we're going to be able to measure, you know, just what we're going to be able to measure, I guess. That's going to be that's where this could get very interesting. You know, we're trying our best to get some objective measures in here to see if we can measure success. And so we'll see if we can. And if we can't, then maybe there's a need for some additional discussion. But anyway, at this point, we're going to try our best. Let's put it that way. B, again, you're going to see that a lot of the changes made in A above are now through the use of may include, estimated. We eliminated restoration on habitat. Instead of calling it habitat restoration, we indicated it was habitat enhancement. I believe that was another one of Commissioner Bliss's suggestions. And we had a lot of discussion around the comparison of the project area, where the project is actually being implemented, and using other areas as a control. And we originally had it as adjacent control areas, and we ultimately decided that the control area may not even be adjacent. And so we just, you know, and one of the other points is that you may be actually just comparing it to the actual area in the, you know, its historical, you know, what's happened historically in that area. And so that was the reason for to strike the adjacent control areas within designated project areas and just indicate other areas. And then somebody made, we added sport harvest data to the some of the variables that we want to look at. Just take that into account. Make sure we're taking those kind of things into account. Now, moving on, assuming there's no comments on B from any of the committee members, moving on to C. What you're seeing here is that we actually, in NRS as well as in the policy, we've kind of been going in an order that it's control programs, management activities, research programs, and education programs. And for some reason, when we drafted this management plan section, we flipped education and research. And so what you're seeing here is this just, we didn't completely rewrite this section. We just changed the order. And so, and C has a lot of the changes that we made above. Same changes were made here, using the word estimated, loosening up the language, making it more flexible, adding sport harvest data. I believe that's it. And then D is just cleaning up, getting the terms correct again. So, moving on to 9. So now the department has the reports, and the department's going to review those reports submitted by contractors and cooperators. We added the word term cooperators, and cleaned up some of the language, Wildlife Damage Management Committee. But one of the things that was missing here was we weren't getting any input from the Wildlife Damage Management Committee. And so what we did here is we inserted a couple of sentences that require, basically have the Wildlife Damage Management Committee reviewing the comments received by the department at the Wildlife Damage Management, you missed one. September meeting of the, down in the first sentence down there, you got a reference to Predation Management Committee. You need to change that one. Don't eliminate committee. You're going to have to use that word, or management. There we go. Wildlife damage. So we have the Wildlife Damage Management Committee reviewing the comments. The department's going to, basically provide us with those, and then after considering the comments from the department as well as comments from all stakeholders, Chairman of the Wildlife Damage Management Committee will provide a report to the Commission at the September Commission meeting. So now we're getting, this is the first time that the Commission will get input as to the reporting that was done by all of the contractors and cooperators with regard to the programs. Moving on to 10. At that point, the department shall prepare an annual predation management status report of the previous year's projects. This status report will be presented to the at the December Commission meeting. So now we've gone full circle. So when the Commission, when the department is going to be in the process of putting together the next year's fiscal year's predation management plan, they're going to be doing that and getting that to the committee, to the Wildlife Damage Management Committee in February. They are now going to have this status report as to the reporting of the prior year's projects. And so when they're considering whether those projects move forward, they'll now have a specific report that basically sets forth whether the project was, is meeting its goals. And at that point, in considering new projects, or whether to go forward with that project or to do new projects, they can now have that information in front of them. So we start the process over again. So that's the policy. Want to go back and get any comments from any of the commissioners? Chairman Rob, you want to take over?
Anything else?
I counted, and I want to thank everybody involved. I got really, really frustrated this last, and I want to apologize to Pete Bradley. He was at the receiving end of some emails from me that where I was a little bit frustrated what was going on, and I do want to apologize to him and Larry. This committee, and I want to thank all the committee members for putting up with this process. We have spent, I think I counted 17 hours getting to this point. And so it's been there's been a certain amount of pain. We started off with certain members of the committee looking at the original policy 25 and with our history of how we did things, wondering why we were doing all of this. And so we spent a good chunk of the very first meeting just trying to get our hands, I was trying to get everybody on the committee to get their head around the NRS provision we were dealing with. That we were writing a policy to implement NRS 502253 and all 4 of the requirements. And so it took a little bit of time to get everybody on board, but once we got on board, then we spent a lot of time and really got into this, and I'm pretty happy with what we've got here. I think we have substantially improved the process, and I'm hoping that as we implement these projects on a go-forward basis, it's going to take a whole year to really get this under our belt. But I think we're going to be all better for it. So,
Okay, Commissioner McNinch.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to say thanks to the committee, just on a personal level and as a commissioner. It's one of those thankless jobs, and regardless of where we end up at, there's certainly been some real honest, open discussion, and I think it's much needed, and I very much like what I see, and I think it really opens the door for the discussions that need to be had, and a new way of looking at things and a new way of doing things, and I appreciate the work that you guys put into it. I know it wasn't easy, and I know it's pretty thankless, but I appreciate what you guys have done.
Any other commission comments before we go to public comment? Commissioner Morai.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I guess I have to confess that at that first meeting, I was one of the ones, I guess I'm a little too much old school, but I didn't really think this was the direction that we should go. And we had considerable amount of discussion on it, and finally we did bail into it, and it took us quite a bit of time, and I'm kind of on the fence still as to whether this is exactly what we want, because I've heard comments from cabs and of course the Cattlemen's Association. They have great concern with it, and they think that this is just a little too much in-depth and too complicated, and a policy should be pretty general. But with the time that we spent on this thing, I think we did get the best product that we could get for Policy 23.
Okay, any other commissioners? Seeing none, let's go out to public comment. Mr. Carpenter?
Yes, thank you. The reason for the open meeting law is transparency in government. The public needs to know what the agencies are doing and the local governments, and really anyone that spends public monies. And if you do the first reading on this today and then try to do the second reading tomorrow, no one has had a chance to really look at this and look at the discussion you people have had. I mean, the discussion about the wildlife services, whether you people are the ones that should approve it or just give it a glance. This needs to go out to the public now so they can comment on it. And maybe it's what they want, but maybe it isn't. But you've had to do a great deal of work on it. You've had a great discussion here today, and the public needs that discussion. And I think that you need to give the public a chance to look at what you've came up here with today and see if they agree or not agree, not agree. If you don't, there's no transparency. You people have sit here as a commission, 9 of you, to put something that is going to affect a great many people. You say it's only a policy, but this policy affects a lot of people, much more than a lot of your regulations do. So I think that you should put this out to the public. The commissions for the, what do you call them, the DAGs, they have not seen this. They have not seen this final product that you want to pass. And it needs to go to those people. And I think that without putting it out to the public, there's no question that, in my mind, that you're breaking the open meeting law. Because that's what it's there for, so that people know what is going on. And if you pass this without putting it out to the public, they don't know what's going on. So I think you better give it wide publicity, put it on your December meeting, and go from there.
Okay, you've reached your 3 minutes. Can you wrap it up?
Well, you know how I feel. I don't think it's right to do it this way. We'll have to see what the Attorney General that handles the open meeting laws
Okay.
complaints says about it.
Mr.
Thank
Carpenter, can we wrap it up? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Laughlin?
For the record, Mike Laughlin. I've listened to this today. I've been involved in this in the past as a committee member on a predatory animal committee meeting. And now I hear this term private contractor, qualified private contractor. My question is, who's going to select this private contractor based on his credentials, based on what he tells you, based on who? Chairman Macbeth, have you hired trappers in the past to do this type of work? This is where I see this whole thing falling down. It sounds really great. However, if Mark Jansen or Joe Bennett or myself have probably hired in excess of several hundred trappers in our lifetime. If you heard all the stories were related by these trappers that were able to fly without wings, they could catch coyotes in the night. It was unbelievable, the stories they would tell you. You had to have a sixth sense of hiring these people because they got to be self-starters. And the only way you do this is, I used to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and be at their camp before they left to see if they were still there. This is a much deeper program than any of you, I think, ever realized, because you've never been involved in it. You can sit here and do the rhetoric, but when in the actuality of going out here on the ground and doing this work, it takes a very specialized person to do this. And I've known some of the best in the West in my lifetime, and I'm also known some of the biggest counterfeits. So my question is, who hires this qualified contractor? ADC has got a track record. They've been in business since back in the Biological Survey with Stanley Young. They began to develop a system on how to hire people that could do this. But just to take somebody off the street, and I'm not saying this in a derogatory way, or who in the department of NDOW knows anything about hiring trappers? Who knows? This is the question I have. So as I said before in your committee meeting, I'd really, really careful with this private contractor business, because you could get out here, even my friend Dr. Moldy is against hiring private contractors, because he knows what happens when you get this program fragmented in the direction in which it seems to be you're going. Thank you.
Come on up, Mr. Flowers.
Rex Flowers, Washoe County. In your discussion on the primary but not exclusive with the contractors, I believe when you take primary out of the equation, you have now made Wildlife Services a contractor equal to all other contractors. Therefore, these being public funds, you may open this up to where you have to put your projects out to bid. With them being a primary contractor, it would give them that level to where you wouldn't be required to bid. Also, well, I'll leave that at that end. As far as this paperwork all goes, it's great and fine, but the cabs have not seen this in this final version. I think you've done a great job on it. I anticipate it's going to go forward pretty easily, but it would, I think, be in the best interest of everybody to send it out and have the cabs review it one more time and bring it back at December for a final. Thank you.
Ms. Wright?
Jana Wright, for the record. I want to compliment the committee for all the hours they've spent on this policy. I certainly support it, but I do have one question on one of your changes. On page 6, number 8, you changed the shall to a may. So correct me if I'm wrong, but you're now saying that people who have projects, instead of they are required to turn in a report, which would include A, B, C, and D, depending on which project they had, that they may. So they don't have to turn in a report, which I thought the policy, the purpose of it was to get some data and get time specifics on what these projects did. Am I incorrect, Mr.
Okay, so
McBeth?
what?
Number 8, you changed from the previous fiscal year, you had shall, and you, unless I wrote this down incorrectly, you changed it to may. What section? 8,
I think
the
it's
third
different.
line.
It's a different shall, I think. Read the last sentence under number 8 before you get to A, Jana.
Well, I see
Okay.
the very last sentence. It says, if, and I'm reading that to take that if they have now decided to turn in a report, then they shall include all of this.
Oh,
But the
no.
line
What-
before, you're saying they might
No.
have an
No.
option.
Actually,
Other
the
way
way it
around.
reads, is, let me just read it. We're talking about the flush language on 8. It says, anytime after June 30th, but no later than August 1st, each contractor or grantee of a control program, management activity, research program, or education program from the previous fiscal year shall submit a report to the commission on a form prescribed by the department, which has been developed in consultation with the Wildlife Damage Management Committee. Shall submit a report. They have to submit a report. That report may include certain things. And so what we did is, yes, we want a report, but we didn't want to tie the hands. We wanted to have some flexibility. We wanted to give some direction, guidance as to what should be in the report, but we didn't want to make it absolutely mandatory as to the specifics.
So the first shall remains, and it's the second one that's a may.
Right.
I wrote that incorrectly, so
Okay.
please.
You bet.
Mr. Johnston?
Brad Johnston, Lyon County Cab. We looked at the policy, as it was presented to us in our supporting materials, and we voted that we were in support of the adoption of that policy. I really can't speak to the policy now that, with the extensive amendments that have been made, I don't envision a problem. And I'll repeat a comment, so other people, I'm sorry if you have to hear this again. I think this policy goes a long way in explaining to the public what this predation management and the fee is going to. So I know it was a very painful process, but I think it's a very worthwhile thing to adopt at the commission level so people understand what the statutory basis is for the $3 fee and the programs that it's going to be used for. So that's been a positive feedback from the public. I imagine we will support this one as amended, but I can't tell you that on my own. So I guess I kind of believe that what Rex Flowers said was perhaps we should take it back to the cabs again and let everyone take a second look with the new language.
Thank you.
Any other, come on up, Mr. Reese.
For the record, Mike Reese. Even though I'm a member of the CAB, we did not have any discussion on this. We ran out of time, so my testimony today is personal and my opinions. I did receive comments from people that, you know, they agree on the habitat, they agree on the research and the classes and stuff. What they're having a hard time swallowing is the fact that that $3 came from a big game application. Yet that money can or may be used for upland game, sage grouse, stuff like that. So they're thinking as they're paying that $3 fee, it's going towards big game. Nowhere in any of this stuff does it refer back to big game. And then they said, well, there's a $10 tag stamp on the upland game. That money should be used for any of that stuff. So just as a perception issue, I think that that should probably be addressed, whether it be verbal or in writing, of how that's being gathered. Because we wouldn't be sitting here talking if that $3 fee wasn't attached on the big game fee, big game applications. Thank you.
Mr. Blakely.
For the record, Joe Blakesley, just speaking for myself. I want to applaud the inclusion of the data from the private trappers. I think that's important, and I think that it's going to show some value for what we do as a group, because nothing operates in a vacuum, and we're certainly out there doing some of this same stuff for free. I wanted to speak to the point of imposing further restrictions on the government trappers. And you might look at the fiscal note in SB 213 that was put out by the Department of Agriculture. The visitation requirements would have been somewhere in the neighborhood of $5 million, I believe. So when you're spending sportsman's money, you might want to keep that in mind as far as what you're doing. It costs money the more restrictive you get on trapping, whether you're private or government. And that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Dr. Moldy. Dr. Moldy, and then you can come on up.
Mr. Chairman, Don Molderino, I'm quite happy that Mr. Laughlin and I now have 2 points of agreement between us. I fully agree with him with respect to his comments on private contractors. That history of that is partly why we're here today with this policy, and I fully agree with his comments. Even though, in full disclosure, I'm a plaintiff on the other side of the lawsuit that Wild Earth Guardians filed against Wildlife Services in Las Vegas, which was dismissed on a standing technicality but is now being appealed. But regardless of that, I fully support Mr. Laughlin's comments, and we both agree that the pecan punches at the Star in Elko are terrific. I also want to congratulate and compliment the committee and the staff of NDOW for working up this policy and the ingenious way in which you did it, which was to take the elements of the law as it was written and then create a policy to include all those elements. I think that was a brilliant way to do it, and I don't recall seeing anything done quite this way. The only thing I would suggest is missing, just a quirk of mine, is that somewhere in here under definition or purpose that there would be some comment that with respect to the decisions made by the Predator Management Committee, there would be some effort to include all perspectives on predator control, not just those represented by sportsmen, in the interest of fairness. I don't see any of that present. I think something like that would be a nice addition to the policy. Thank you.
Come on up.
Cecil Freddy, representing Hunters Alert. In 2001, Assembly Bill 241 was passed into law. The intent of this law was very clear: to raise money for predator control to enhance game numbers. It appears this commission wanted to circumvent the intent of the law. This is like our current president. When a law is passed, he changed it to suit his own needs. This commission wants to spend the predator control money on studies. There's been many studies on all types of wildlife. A recent study within the last 2 years done by USDA showed predation was the main reason for declining sage grouse numbers in Wyoming. Many studies have shown the main food for lions is mule deer. A study by NDOW was done on sage grouse production and mortality. 1,400 eggs were placed in 200 simulated sage grouse nests with 7 eggs per nest. This was done during the 15-day period when sage hens lay their eggs. At the completion of the 15-day period, all 1,400 eggs were destroyed by predators. Ravens were believed to be the chief nest predator. You want studies? Well, here's a couple you won't like. At the May 4th, 1996 Wildlife Commission meeting, 1,950 sportsmen wrote to Commissioner Cabin. And I've got Commissioner Cabin stated, and this is quoting, "We've got to do something to reduce mountain lions in the state of Nevada. They don't want to wait 5 years to get something done about it. I will say that the majority of them are unhappy as the devil about the division and the commission and the mountain lion situation the way it is today concerning the deer harvest." End of quote. Well, here we are 17 years later. Nothing's changed. Truly government at its worst. I doubt anyone on this commission received 1,950 responses on any wildlife issue. Excuse me. The next survey was done by Assemblyman Jerry Claiborne. Here are a few of the questions and responses. Do you think mountain lions and coyotes are responsible for the decline of our Nevada deer herd? Yes, 83%. No, 17%. Are you pleased with the way the Nevada Department of Wildlife and the Wildlife Commission are managing our deer? Yes, 5%. No, 95%. Are you willing to pay a $3 fee for a viable predator control program? Yes, 72%. No, 28%. It appears this current commission is in the minority regarding what sportsmen want. You don't want to listen to the people who pay for this agency. It only matters what NDOW and the Wildlife Commission want. Coyote studies show that they kill fawn deer, antelope, or anything else they can sink their teeth into. Now this commission wants to fund coyote studies, probably to disprove prior studies. And you want to do it with predator control money. Making the lion a big game animal, outlawing 1080 poisoning were big mistakes that have hurt our game populations. Your proposal to defund predator control money will also be a big mistake. It doesn't say much for any of the so-called sportsmen's representatives on this commission who will vote for this. For those of you who continually blame drought and refuse to believe predator control works, here are some recent comparisons. Because of wolves, a predator by the way, Idaho has 24,000 unsold deer and elk tags, costing the state $4 million in lost revenue. At the same time, Utah, without wolves, issued 14,000 cow elk tags to keep their herds from exploding beyond habitat capacity. I guess they only had drought in Idaho, but I guess they didn't have any in Utah. In Utah, since they've implemented a $50 bounty on coyotes, they've had tremendous results in increased fawn study and survival. The key word here is survival. Areas went from 50 per 100 to 74 fawns per 100 does. This proves that predator control does work. NDOW loves to throw that word science around. Please show me the science that proves repealing funding for predator control will make more deer for sportsmen. You can't do it. This is sportsmen's money you're wasting. I doubt if it was money out of your own pocket, you'd spend it just recklessly. By the way, I've never seen a study where more lions and coyotes enhance game numbers. Your proposal is not going to hurt me. I haven't applied for a tag in Nevada for over 20 years. And I'll never apply in this state again. You're hurting the future of hunting by virtue of what you're doing to our youngsters. They will never get the chance to experience what deer hunting was like years ago. For decades, a father looked forward to taking his son or daughter on their first deer hunt. Today, this hunt would be better called a sightseeing trip. Buying a license tag should be called either a fraud or a donation to NDOW, because the deer are just not there. Ask Jerry Landy, 4 days in the Rubies, 2 deer just seen this week. Going to Disneyland would be more exciting and a better use of $1 for their children. The commission should be listening to old-timers like John Carpenter, rancher Cliff Garden, and many others. They witnessed deer migrations by the thousand in Elko County. Well, let's not believe them. Let's believe an NDOW biologist, I'm not allowed to use his name, who proudly stated that he spends 0 days in the field.
30
I never met a rancher who bragged about never spending a day in the field. Of course, the state of Nevada wasn't paying the ranchers wages and pensions either. I'm proud to say I spent the time to do something to help restore our once famous deer herds, and I was not in a position of authority like you commissioners. What have members of this commission done for this? Bringing back our deer. A single word answer would be nothing. I know there's at least 2 anti-hunters on this commission. The final vote on this issue will confirm exactly how many anti-hunters there are really on the Wildlife Commission.
Sir, can you wrap it up? We've given you extra time.
I got
because
6 minutes.
You took your whole 6 minutes. We've timed it, you're
Okay.
at 6.
In accordance with the open meeting law, I request my testimony is entirely being included in the minutes of this meeting and sent to all parties that are distributed. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Gerald Lent representing Nevada Hunter Association. Wildlife Service was doing most of predator work because they have the means at their disposal to do a better job at predator control. That's why they were used. They have airplanes, etc. The chief of game said we would not have written policy 23 the way it was had we have known AB 345 would not pass. But the minutes show Endow wrote plans in the spirit, quote, and that's what it says in the minutes, in the spirit of 345. This whole plan was written in the spirit of 345. AB 345 was to replace a predator bill, but it was vetoed. This policy 23 is not legal with the intent of the law. It's very obvious with the legislative intent. I have a couple letters here. One was from the officer of the governor to the director mayor. And if you want to talk about intent of what this bill was, even the director and the agency knew it. It says, the present situation is counterproductive to my goal of increasing the mule deer population in Nevada. I expect you and your staff to implement the policies established by the commission, and I'm going to put that in the record. So even the director knew what the governor wanted. Another letter that he wrote back to the governor, Governor Jim Gibbons, you have been very clear to me about your desire for me to work in earnest to bring the deer back. Very obvious. Another letter that he wrote to Assemblyman Jerry Claiborne, and it's been 6 months since the close of the legislature, and he said the items I committed the Nevada Department of Wildlife to work on. And he itemized 7 objects here. Ensure that the predation management program benefits mule deer and other big game while keeping indirect costs to a minimum. And I'm just going through a couple of them. Promote a relationship with ranchers and landowners so with their local knowledge of specific predator problems, they can make recommendations. This is a censure, and if you want to talk about intent, this is intent. I don't care what this guy says here. To ensure that the commission's predator committee acknowledges the desire of the legislature to see the recovery of Nevada's mule deer to be a principal focus of predation management projects. Can't be any clearer than that, folks. The department fully appreciates and shares the concern of the governor, the legislature, and the Nevada sportsmen over the declining mule deer herds. Signed, Ken Mayer. Very, very clear what the department was instructed to do. And as far as the cattleman rep here, let me read something to you here. This was in the official testimony at the legislature. David Laxalt, representing Nevada Cattlemen Association, Yukon, Nevada. We support the intent of the bill, which is the continued maintenance of the predator control program to protect Nevada's wildlife and livestock populations. I've submitted a copy of a letter in support from Mr. Dan Grayland, President of Nevada Cattlemen's Association. They even knew and said it was for the protection of Nevada's wildlife. It wasn't to do all these studies. And nowhere in this bill, or the 502-253, does it say to treat all 4 sections equally, as the chairman of your committee said. It's just the opposite. None of you guys were there. We were. Assemblyman Carpenter, Cecil Freddy, myself, and Don Moley. And we know what the intent of the bill was. It's very clear, regardless of what you're told here. I went through it many, many times, the intent, and these letters I'm gonna put in the record. This shows the intent of what came down the line. And I'd like, in the open meeting law, I want all my comments to be included in the minutes of the meeting and in all the dissemination of minutes. And I'll give this to the secretary. Who's the secretary? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Castanel, oh, come on up and then. No. We can't trade time. Even the agenda says we can't give time. Well, go ahead. Let's take this comment and come on up.
I'll be short. For the record, Bill Halverson, I'm the Vice President of Fraternity Desert Bighorn, and I'm concerned about the 10 items that are listed in this budget here for predatory management.
That's the next agenda item.
I'm sorry?
It's the next agenda item.
It's the next agenda
Yeah,
item?
we're going to get to that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought this was the time to comment. All right.
Come on up.
For the record, Brad Johnston, I feel like it's necessary to make a comment because I keep hearing this time and time again of what the intent of the bill was. And I don't want to get into a legal debate, but you determine the intent of the legislature by looking at the language the legislature actually adopts, that is set forth by Nevada Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, and every other court that has to interpret statutes all the time. So what one gentleman may say was the intent of the legislature because he was there doesn't matter. What is actually adopted. 502-253 sets forth 4 types of programs for which the $3 application fee should be going to. And we're all ignoring then another point, which is subsection 3 of that statute that says those programs are to be done under the guidance of the commission pursuant to subsection 2 of NRS 501-181. That brings us back to the statute that creates this commission that says, that subsection 2, you are to guide the department by the establishment of such policies, which refers back to the initial task of this commission, which is set forth in 501-181-1, which is to establish broad policies for the protection, propagation, restoration, transplanting, introduction, and management of the wildlife in this state. For the assertion that the adoption of any policy like this somehow runs afoul of 502-253 is absolutely absurd, and it's ridiculous to keep hearing it time and time again. I encourage everyone to actually read the full statutes as the Nevada legislature enacted them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the committee, or commission. Commissioner Moray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In relation to the public comment, I do have a letter from the Nevada Cattlemen's Association addressing the Policy 23. Would you like me to read that into the record now?
If
or
you would
do
like,
that?
Mr. Moray, it's of relevance, yes.
Okay, thank you. The Nevada Cattlemen's Association is a nonprofit trade organization that provides a means for Nevada ranching industry to present a united front on the issues that impact agricultural communities and rural Nevada in general. The association represents public and private land ranchers in Nevada. We as an association work hard to create environmentally sustainable and economically viable operations across the state to support not only rural communities but the rangelands of the West. The association fully understands the need to address habitat conservation in relation to predator control in the state of Nevada. However, we believe predator control funds should not be spent to further expand an already existing habitat department in the Nevada Department of Wildlife. We thank the Predator Control Committee for their hard work on researching and writing Commission Policy 23, Predation Management, and urge the Nevada Department of Wildlife and Wildlife Commission to direct predator control funds to on-the-ground control efforts. Signed by J.J. Goycochea, President of Nevada Cattlemen's. And I just wanted to make sure that we don't have a representative from the Elko County Advisory Board here, but everybody did receive their comments on this, correct?
Commissioner McNinch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I have one more quick question. Well, probably not quick, but the concept of contractor came up, and an open bid process, are we opening that up to some kind of an open bid process, or are we back to, us going out and asking folks to do work, or?
I don't know if that's defined at this point, or if it's just a tool in the toolbox of the plan that we can, I don't know if the department's
I understand it, and maybe that's not something that can be answered right now, but I know working in public arena, there are rules that nobody in this room, unless you work for it, would ever contemplate are there in place. It's complicated and it's difficult, so I don't know if this is, when making reference to contractor, when we start using the term contractor, you get into certain offices in government, and that could be interpreted that you're going to go out to bid on every last project and every last thing, and it's just a question, not quite rhetorical, but guess it's kind of not quite answered in my mind yet.
Director Wazzy, and then I'll go to Commissioner Drew.
Yeah, I think there are both requirements of the state in that contracting process, and there are requirements of any prospective contractor in terms of insurance. There are also specific provisions that allow the state in certain circumstances to fill out a solicitation waiver, which is a sole source agreement or argument. But I guess we'd have to cross those bridges when we come to them, and I don't know that there's anything in this policy that limits or dictates our actions in that regard.
Yeah, in regards to page 3, number 5, I think that's where we're talking the reference to contractor in regards to wildlife services. And I think Director Jensen made a statement earlier that makes some sense, given the fact that there's already an MOU in place. Perhaps cooperating agency is a better terminology to use than contractor, just to be clear that there is a differentiation there. And maybe that's not the case, but that might be one way to address that concern.
Commissioner McNinch.
And I only bring it up because I want to make sure that, if we're going down these paths, let's make sure we ask the questions. And I understand the sole source. I just went through it with a grant. Literally one person known in the country that can conduct the process, and we were asked to go through an RFP and an RFP process, and it was brutal. And of course, we only had one respondent, and I don't want everything that happens to have to go through a process like that. And then I would like to make just one more quick comment about the second reading tomorrow. I'm really not opposed to taking this to the December meeting personally, myself. If that's what it's going to take to get this back out, and I don't, there's not a major, there's no major deadlines going on here, and to do a second reading or take our second reading tomorrow, take more public comment, whatever, bring it back for an approval in December. I'm not sure that there's much of a problem with it. It just seems maybe safer ground in some senses, maybe resource saving in others. I don't know. It's just unless there's a compelling reason, I'm not sure that there's any major problem with that. So.
Commissioner Young.
Going back to which Commissioner McNinch just said, I would recommend that we change it to primary cooperative agency. I think you're opening a can of worms by opening it up to other people easily. My experience on Metro PD has been that. Secondly, I agree with Rex Flowers and Mr. Johnston about putting this off, letting the cabs take a final look at it. We let them look at almost everything else carefully, and I think we'd be making a mistake in something this important. Obviously, this committee has put a tremendous amount of work and effort into this thing. Somewhat like Commissioner Moore, I'm not sure if exactly where I'm at on everything, but you guys have done a heck of a job. And finally, for Mr. Johnson's comments, thank you very much. I couldn't agree with you more on the legislative process and the meaning of law. Thanks.
And when it comes to whether we do this tomorrow or hold it till the next meeting, I'm on the fence, I really am, because I'll tell you why. The cabs haven't seen the final product, no. But a lot of times when we set seasons, we set quotas, we do the things we do as a commission, they don't see the final product till it's done. They get input throughout the process. And this process has allowed a ton of input. 17 hours of availability of input from the count that I have. So that's the way the commission works. We ask for input, we take that input, and we make a decision. So I would have no trouble going forward with it. But if it's more palatable to send it back out, I can go either way. But I can tell you, if you're looking for transparency, this has been as transparent as I have ever seen. I don't think we're hiding anything. I don't think there's anything that hasn't been covered. And we have given ample opportunity for every type of comment to be made. So I'm comfortable either way. Commissioner Macbeth, or?
I absolutely agree, and with your statement, that the policy has been now vetted in, I think, the May, the June, and the August, and now the September meetings. I believe those are the periods. And if anything, the changes, a lot of the changes that you see here were editing changes. We had, just whenever you put together a document like this, there's a lot involved. And towards the end of the process, I did a lot of cleanup. And so even though there's a lot of red on the paper, a lot of that is just wordsmithing. And a lot of the substantive changes actually were brought forth by Commissioner Bliss, and the direction that they generally went were to allow more flexibility. There was a common theme, what he brought to the process in this policy, and it was generally more flexibility. And so I think that the direction those changes went and that you see in this final product, are actually beneficial, and I don't think that they're so far off that somebody who has been involved in this process and looking at this policy is going to lose anything by not having been here or seen the absolute final product. I have one reservation. The comments from Rex Flowers with regard to, and then the whole issue of whether Wildlife Services is the primary versus the just a contractor, and this bidding issue. I looked over at the DAG. He doesn't know the answer to the question. I don't know the answer to the question. If there was anything that caused me pause, this is it. And I wouldn't want to put out a final policy unless we knew absolutely what the answer to that question is, if we're opening up a can of worms by writing it this way. And so that's my only reservation. Other than that, I'm ready. I am so ready to be done with this policy. You can't even understand. And I'm sure everybody on the committee feels the same way. But to make sure that we had the absolute best product, if we had to wait until December to answer that question, then I would be okay with that. So that's kind of where I'm at.
So maybe I can make a recommendation.
I'm sorry. Commissioner Bliss.
If the language was changed back to primary but not exclusive, if we could do that, could we do that now? And then would that clear that part of it up for you, Commissioner Macbeth?
Yeah, and even maybe potentially considering the language that, the language that Commissioner Young brought up.
Sure.
As being, and what it does is kind of, in my mind, reflects the reality of the relationship and where we've been all along. but nevertheless allows some flexibility for the department to contract with an outside contractor on a particular case basis if, if necessary. And so I'm okay with that. And if everybody's still comfortable that that eliminates this potential bidding issue, then I'm thinking that that might be the way to go. If you want to get this done, do a second reading tomorrow.
So along those lines, if Mr. Bradley could bring up the policy and go to subsection A, number 5. So would we, on the third line, we would say, actually on the fourth line, as a primary cooperating agency and remove contractor. Cooperating agency.
I don't think you need to capitalize cooperating in an agency.
And then we would strike a contractor. And I would ask Tony as director if he, or Director Wasley, if he's got any concern with that language, given that we have an MOU in place.
No, I think that's an accurate reflection of our relationship.
Good. That's,
Right, so the next line, we'd take other out, so it'd just say qualified contractors and cooperators. Correct, thank you. So with that, I'd be willing to make a motion to advance the, oh, I am not making a motion.
No, we can make a motion. I apologize, Jeremy.
Okay. So I'd make a motion to advance the revised version as shown on the screen and reviewed today by the commission to a second reading.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
And my intent with that, just to start off discussion, was we can discuss when we want to do the second reading, but I think it's important to get this through first reading and to second reading, we can discuss when that should happen.
Okay, motion and second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passed unanimous. So, we have the issue of when we're going to do the second reading and finalize this thing before we move off this agenda item.
Yeah, and I guess we could either discuss that now or tomorrow.
You want to discuss it tomorrow? Okay. All right, we'll move, well, let's break for 10 minutes and come back.